You all look amazing tonight. Did you like the movie? I liked it too. So I ran into a few people while I was out there. So I thought I'd ask them to come on in and we could have a little conversation. Sound fun? All right. First up, he transformed Stellan Skarsgård into a very, very creepy little monster. Makeup, hair, and prosthetic designer Donald MOWAT. Next up, pardon my French, he shot the shit out of this movie so beautifully. Master of the lens, Mr. GREIG FRASER. She gave Rebecca Ferguson a dress that is very difficult to walk in wind with, but it was still so beautiful. Costume designer Jacqueline West. He's all about the music, Mr. Hans Zimmer. She produced this little independent film, producer Mary Parent. And finally, he's a great up-and-comer in this business. He's done some really amazing films. Academy Award nominee, director Denis Villeneuve. All right. Hi,
First of all,
everyone.
hello. Thank you so much for being all here tonight. So many people. Thank you so much for having watched the movie in the theater. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. You're wondering why I called this meeting with you guys tonight. And I'll start with you, Denny. Congratulations on a fantastic outing, adaptation of a story that is near and dear to many people. I have to start with why Dune? Why Dune at this point in your career? Did you think you could and would take it on?
Yeah, but the thing is that it's a book that stayed with me for 4 decades. I mean, it's like it's a book that I fell in love when I was 13 or 14 years old, and I there was what it was about at the time. When I revisited through to a different time in my life, the love, the flames kept was alive. Kept being alive, and it's a book that I've been obsessed by. And when people were asking me what would be your dream project if you had one, and it's always that book that came in my mind. It's what it says about the world, the way Frank Herbert inspires himself from the major current of the 20th century, and like foresaw what will be the world today. I think the book is more relevant, sadly, than it used to be when it was written in the 60s. Today, it's like it's really honestly, it's once in a lifetime gift that I received from life to have the chance to do it, because it's one of my oldest dreams. Yeah. I don't answer to your question. Why Dune?
Well, thank you. Thank you for trying anyway. I appreciate it. I appreciate the effort. Miss Mary Parent, you overseeing this project must have been really stressful in so many different ways regarding weather, vision, and just making sure everything came together. How challenging was it to end up at the place that we see now, which is one of the best films this year and in the science fiction genre probably in some time.
The making of the movie actually wasn't that challenging. Having a lot to do with the group that's sitting here. It was hard getting in the gate. It was a long journey getting the rights. It was not an easy adaptation. You know, Denis can speak to that. You know, it had its challenges like every film does, but I always find the easiest directors to work for are the ones that have a crystal clear vision. As he just said, he's had a lot of time to think about this. He's been in prep since he was 14. You know? And, you know, he's the A++ student who literally, you know, boards, everything's in his head, his vision, his mind, and he's able to collaborate with everybody and get it down and be so over-prepared that then on the day he can also be free to experiment and do things as well. So the making of the film I found to be a total joy. You know, it was an incredible group of people, everybody, you know, at the top of their game. Denis inspires you, I think, to do your best work, but it wasn't so easy getting in the gate. That's where it was hard.
Mr. Hans Zimmer, you have brought about some of the most recognizable and amazing compositions in film ever. Items like The Lion King and Inception and countless others. How was it to work on this? Because as we all know, composing is the last thing you do on a movie, but did you already have in your head how you were going to tackle this in comparison to other projects?
Should I tell the truth? Just like Denis, I read the book when I was 13 years old. I was so obsessed with it that I never saw the David Lynch movie because I made a movie in my head as I was reading the book. And I never saw the television series or anything like this. And I think this is the truth. Very quietly one day you said to me, have you ever read a book called Dune? And I sort of went, you know? And I think I terrified you a little bit with, but the way you asked, and this is the only way, you used the voice, you used the Denis voice. And at that moment I knew the movie you had in your head was the movie I had in my head. And please correct me if you think this is just German bullshit. But I kept thinking our process was so fluid that, you know, usually it's a discussion, you know. He has this idea and then we discuss and we go back and forth, etc. With you and me, you'd start a sentence and I would finish it, or I would start a sentence and finish it. It was like we were telepathically already making the same movie all the way through.
It's true. Hans was the first person once after Mary when we decided to make the movie together. Hans was at the time we were finishing Blade Runner, and one of my first conversation about the book was with Hans, and so it you started to work on.
But it was always like a secret. I never let anybody know how much the book meant. It took a friend to get me to go and do it, if that makes sense, because it meant so much to me as a child, or as a teenager. And we were talking about this earlier. One of the things which I think happened was that both Denis, and this should terrify you, Mary, both Denis and I, we made it, when we came to make this movie, we were 13-year-olds again. We weren't looking at it with the wisdom of years and wise men and all that sort of bullshit. We were there again, you know, and I think that was very precious to us.
Yes.
Reckless, I think, is the word I'm looking for.
There's a theme happening right now. I was a really bad 13-year-old. I did not read like anything when I was 13. You guys have been thinking about this your whole lives. Probably why I don't make movies. Jacqueline West, Oscar nominee for The Revenant, and you brought about some of the most beautiful costumes in the last decade. How did you even walk into this thinking about the world you wanted to build in capturing characters' personality, their traits, and then also dealing with high level of winds in the desert, in particular, Rebecca Ferguson?
I didn't think I could, and Mary convinced me. Denis asked, and I thought, oh, I've never done, a sci-fi film, and then she said, just meet him. That's not what he's making. And she had me come to her office and put me in a room alone with him on the screen. And I talked to him in Canada. And when he started talking about it, it was a seminal book for me too. I'm from Berkeley, where it was a Bible when it was written. And I always tell the story that I lived on a houseboat across from Alan Watts, where Frank Herbert wrote part of Dune. So it was a book I had always, been really important to me, and I didn't think it really could be made the way I always envisioned it. And then I met Denis, and everything he said rang so true that I was convinced, and Mary was right.
So thank you for sharing. Greg Fraser, one of my heroes, by the way. We go look through your career of Zero Dark 30 to Lion to Vice to this, and this is gorgeous with colors, hues, lighting. It's something that we've never would expect. Besides, I guess, a simple start of like, how do you even set up a camera for something like this? But how did you approach this material in comparison to anything else you've taken on before?
It's a very different material, and it's something that I didn't have a vision of early because I didn't have a relationship with the book. I knew the story, of course, everybody knows the story. But I listened to Denis talk about his passion, and one thing you can tell with Denis, like the poetry of his language is so captivating. And this is the thing, I wish I understood French, because if he speaks with such poetry with his English, like his French must be...
It's
like,
the accent.
So
I hypnotize them with the accent.
So captivated by the accent, okay, not by the story, but so listening to Denis' kind of download of this amazing story, and just his focus, and all the things that Denis spoke about were character based first and foremost, which is something that is paramount to me with any story I tell. It's character. Doesn't necessarily mean you can't then build a world from that, which I find really exciting. So, how do I approach it? I mean, one bite at a time. It's like eating an elephant. How do you do such a big, complicated thing technically and narratively? It's like you just go one step in front of another, and you hopefully, when you're surrounded by such great talent, here and on screen, and you just got to not screw up. Like, it's a little bit like I just got to keep my head down and make sure that I don't screw up.
Well, you did it, by the way.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give you that heads up. Donald, you won't stop hanging out with Denis because you guys have worked on quite a few films together. Prisoners, Sicario, Blade Runner 2049, and you're back together with, on Dune. And this probably, of everything you've done, looks like the most intensive prosthetics and makeup work that we've seen from you. How did you plan something like this out in creating these new looks of characters?
I think working with Denis, he inspires that a creative kind of passion in everybody. I mean, everyone that worked together in all the different departments, even if we don't get to see each other day to day, you really feel it. It's kind of harmonious, and there's a lot of great respect. And I really say that's a testament to Denis and working on other films with him, that you just deliver, you want to do the best work possible to help him make this film, and then work with Greg and Jacqueline and Mary, everybody, and the key creative people. You feel like you're doing something that you'll never regret, and it's terrifying, and there are days you think, I could really screw something up here, but it's really rewarding and fulfilling experience to be around that.
Cool. Let's change gears by saying something terrible about Timothée Chalamet. So it's like a really super duper talented guy, and it really angers me often.
Hard to like as well, really hard to like.
Like, yeah, it's really hard for me. But he steps into this role with ease. I mean, Denis, just looking at this team that you have on stage is like any filmmaker would die to have this team of artisans here.
I agree with you.
And then Chalamet and Oscar Isaac and Rebecca Ferguson, and so I don't know what you did right. I would like some of that, good juju as well of how to get that together. But did you already have your team in mind when you took it on? Did you know who you wanted to go at this with?
You're talking about casting or the
Casting, everyone, every piece of it.
I think that most of the artists I've worked on Dune are people I had worked with before. But the goal is always trying to build the perfect team, and I will say that I didn't work with Jacqueline before, but I was looking for a costume designer that will have a relationship with history and culture in a way that was more like I loved the work of Jacqueline in the period movie, and what she had done for The Revenant or the previous work always was really blew me away. And this I wanted someone that when you read Dune, it's like almost like reading like a historical novel. Like if you had sent an historian in a time machine and came back with Dune from the future, and I wanted to have that relationship with time to feel the roots of different Earth culture, like if you feel in the book. And I thought that Jacqueline will be absolutely perfect for that. So we Mary and I went to ask to Jacqueline, and Greg was my first choice because I had been blown away by his work, most specifically involving natural light. Because in the novel, the main character, if you can say, is nature. The religion is biology, and I wanted to bring a feeling of familiarity on the planet Arrakis, so the audience will feel that this planet feels dangerously close to us. And one of the way to do that is with the light, and to have something like of everyday life. And Greg has a capacity to bring poetry and strength in that zone, and that's why I would say. So it's like the good news is when you do a project like Dune is that the book brings a lot of passion. It was the same for casting. I mean, the actors in the acting community, there was a lot of will to be in contact with that book. So it was like it was fun because people were there was a lot of enthusiasm to work on this adaptation.
My question for all of you, in relation to your personal job related to the film, what was the hardest thing that you faced as part of your craft in putting this together? So in terms of makeup, shooting, with the costume, composition, producing, direction, and writing and co-producing.
No one wants to go first. No, but I would say for me, by far it was the writing. As Mary said, it was technically the most challenging movie I ever made, but where I really put my hair out of my head was writing with Eric Roth and John Spade. That was the big challenge, I would say. Yeah, how to keep the essence of that novel, to keep all the strength of the ideas, the poetry, but in the same time to make sure that my mother, who never read the book, will understand it, and to make sure that hardcore fans of the book would recognize the images and the poetry of the book. That was the biggest challenge, I would say. After that, it was difficult, but we had a lot of fun.
I think for me, for us, in post-production, the hardest thing was we had started something, and we started working with these great female voices, and we were like a band. We were sort of, and then COVID came, and suddenly, we weren't a band anymore. I moved my studio to my sitting room, and my daughter swears she has PTSD from bagpipes. And so now we were working in a completely different way, and I one of the things that I love about filmmaking is that I see it like a band. I see it like a collaborative process. And the way Denis and I started our whole relationship was like literally, come into the room, we're going to make some noise and see what happens. And suddenly to be deprived of that was very, it was just very difficult. You know, at the same time I was working with people, which I think I wouldn't have done quite the same way. I was working with people in Australia, I was working with people in Vienna, I was working with people in London, Brooklyn, and Los Angeles, and so all these different time zones were taking place. And I was very excited because I could get all these amazing musicians because nobody was touring anymore. But I forgot that the only person who was really going to suffer from the time zones was I, who had to go and talk to somebody in Australia, and then, you know, it's like, so that, but really, all joking aside, it was the lack of just, you know, us being together, and at the end it became that again, you know, and I think, I don't know, those Zoom things, you know, it's not the same.
Well, welcome to Zoom 3D now. It's doing very well right now. Anybody else want to add to that?
You know, I was thinking that a lot of the technical challenges that we can deal with because we work together and show Denis a lot of show and tell and virtual and makeup tests, you know, bald caps, all kinds of tricky technical makeup things. But I would say the hardest thing, it wasn't hard, was more a challenge with such an incredible cast that were really one-on-one, and we had an ensemble cast all together in one makeup hair area, was making sure that you could sort of, it was like having a big family and making sure everyone had the appropriate attention when they needed it, when it was their moment. And I think that's kind of reading the room. And that would be, I think, some of the harder days when really huge setups or big days with every cast member in, you kind of have to make sure everyone feels that they got 100% from you and had your attention and complete devotion, really, which I think we work very hard at.
Quick follow-up on that. How long did it take to get Stellan Skarsgård into that?
Without the clothes, 6 hours. With 4.5, 2 hours to clean up.
Yeah, so it means that, if I may, from my understanding, what you told me, it was like sometime at the beginning, because then the crews get used to the process, but the first time for 8 hours, so it means that they start 8 hours of makeup, then he arrives on set, you know. So and he was in good spirit.
I have a great memory of Stellan. My kids came to visit one day, and one of the scenes that I didn't let them come into, and they were walking through the stages, and my 6-year-old, 5-year-old comes up to me and goes, "Dada, there's a naked man walking across the," because he didn't have to cover up because he wasn't, yeah.
Very Scandinavian.
Anyone else? No?
For me, I mean, there was lots of challenges. I think it was the scale and the light, because trying to create that natural light on such a big scale is very hard, particularly when you've built the sets on stage. And we had such incredible design that there's a huge pressure I put on myself to do justice to Patrice's designs, because they are incredible. They are incredible. I mean, it's stunningly designed. So I remember there was walls of this artwork in our main bullpen area, and every time I walked past these designs, but when we were in pre-production, I always felt slightly ill, because I knew that if I didn't create something that looked as good as those artwork, that I couldn't look at him in the eye anymore, or anybody, like, because it was so good.
Yeah, and the thing is that it was beautiful, but it was huge, and it created the sets. The design were too big for our sound stages, and we were in and we shot in Budapest, where the sound stages were massive, and so we had to build outside sometimes, because, and that's a thing that Greg did that was absolutely beautiful, was to make sure that to bring that realism that we were looking for, to build outside. So we were working with sunlight, real sunlight, instead of so the biggest sets were built.
I think it's a very astute thing for Denis to push the naturalism of the light, because sci-fi necessarily isn't that yeah, it depends. Sci-fi is a lot of things to a lot of people, so you can't put it in a box. But there's very, very little artificial light in this. Very little. You know, like there's some interior lights and there's some ship lights, but there's very little artificial light. It's like fire or it's sun. You know, like it's two versions of that, and they can be hard to do on big scale.
The biggest challenge for me were the specialty costumes, because I'd never really done a movie with 400 different specialty costumes. That was daunting. And creating the different looks for the different worlds and grounding them in some kind of reality. I used a lot of medieval references. Finally became modieval in the department. But I had to give each of these worlds a different look, and the combination of keeping them different enough so that when the battles ensued, it wasn't just a big jumble, and you could see the different forces coming at each other and see their differences. That was a really big challenge, and dressing a 400-pound man. Never done that before.
Mary, did you want to add?
Last one. I think from my perspective, it was, first of all, getting the rights. Took a long time to get the rights. I ironically sold it to Legendary before I came to the company, so it felt kind of like destiny, which is a big theme. But they kept switching lawyers, and it was really, we just had to sort of be relentless. And then I got really lucky because I've said this before. I read in an article that he wanted to direct it, so it was like after years and years and years of like hell trying to get these rights, suddenly like your dream director's like, oh, my dream project is Dune, and he's actually said that in an interview, so that made it a lot easier. I think the fact that Denis wanted to make this so real and like an old school Hollywood epic, building these sets, it's a lot easier to do, set extensions and so to figure out, because Denis also he also produced the movie, so he was a real partner in that way, and he'd take his director hat off for a moment, and he's very responsible. We didn't make it for the size of some of these other films, and so, the decisions to build and to go and actually put boots on the ground, they were all the right decisions, but everything had to be incredibly precise, which worked from him because he had such a clear vision, but we had to sort of hit that vision, otherwise we were going to outgrow
We
our
would not be
hands
here.
very quickly. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. My last question for you guys before we watch Dune Part 2 right now. Wouldn't that be dope, right? If you just made it. Guys, surprise! It's here. Wait, do you have it?
My stomach
Is it
just
done?
sank in. I was like, where was I?
This is a labor of love, passion project for all of you. And this also just comes at a very particular time that it renews our love for the movies, the big screen, movie theaters. What is the one thing you want audiences to take away from this film in terms of your contribution? Anyone can answer that, but what do you want people to walk away with?
This is what making big movies is about, to experience this and to actually see all the detail and feel it. It's a completely different experience, and there's so many different aspects of this film, the adventure, the philosophical aspects, all of those beautifully blend and come alive on the big screen in ways that only the big screen can do, and we don't often get to make these kinds of big Hollywood epics, so we're all grateful that we got to do it and that people have actually gone to the theaters to see it.
In
I
terms
mean, for us, I think the big screen is sort of very important because it's how you read it, for instance. Your eye takes a lot longer to travel across a big screen, and as your eye travels, there's a whole new story unfolding. When you look at a small screen, you take everything in and it's all done. And then if you're a musician and you really want to go and do things with big speakers, and I actually had this on Dark Knight. So they wanted to release the soundtrack in vinyl, and they kept sending it back to us saying, there's a 20-second silence in the middle of it. And I'm going, no, there isn't. it was the speakers couldn't handle the bass, right? So to this day, there's still people writing. Oh, that's a very artistically challenging thing. There's a 20-second silence in the middle of it. But this movie, it's the same thing. I think I would I made it cinematic. I made it for the big screen. I made it for big speakers. You know, Denis and I were talking about this before. We're not at odds at all with the iPad or whatever it is. It's just we would have approached things, I think, in a slightly different way. I mean, I wouldn't have gone down to 10 hertz. You know, it's like
No, but you compose the music for Atmos, also.
Absolutely, yeah, no. I admit I went a little insane. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't stop. I mean, we finished the movie and I kept writing.
Hans, it's not a joke. He's still writing the music.
Well, it's sort of, well, yeah, but you know, I was betting on the fact that it said this is only the beginning, and I felt it would be prudent to be ready.
So Hans wants you to take away, get bigger speakers for your houses. Like that's really where this boils down to.
Actually, no, I don't want that.
Ooh.
I don't want you to get bigger speakers for your houses because there's another part to it, which is all of you together. We experience things in a communal way on the big screen. We dream together. And if you get these really big speakers, your neighbors are just going to call you.
Anyone else want to add one last note?
What you ask, what people.
What do you want people to take away from this?
No, me that it's like when I don't answer to that question because it's like when I watch a painting or I read a poem or I'm not asking the painter to explain to me. I love to. So it's the same with the movie. You know, I love freedom. People to take a bit like when I read the book. Say Frank Herbert was not behind me saying me what to think about it. You know, it's like so I just want people to. I hope it will touch them, inspire them, and maybe give them curiosity toward the book. That's what I would say.
Well, everybody, if you look under your seat, there's a sandworm there for you to take home with you today. My name's Clayton Davis. I'm with Variety. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you guys for the conversation. And tell everyone to see Dune.